Every day, they laughed at the janitor. They called him useless, invisible, a nobody. But what they didn't know, while they were mocking him in the office, he was quietly buying their entire company. And by morning, he wouldn't be cleaning their mess anymore. He'd be owning it. Welcome back to my channel. Before we continue with this powerful story, make sure you subscribe, like this video, and share it with someone who loves inspiring stories. And don't forget to comment below and tell me where you're watching from. Your support helps this channel grow and allows me to keep bringing you emotional stories like this one. Now, let's continue with the story. The night shift always began the same way. Adrian Voss pushed his cleaning cart through the glass doors at exactly 7:42 p.m. Not 7:40, not 7:45, always 7:42. He liked precision. It gave him control over something, even if it was small. The receptionist barely looked up. "Evening," Adrian said quietly. A faint nod. No eye contact. That was normal. Adrian signed his name in the logbook, placed the pen back in its exact position, and began moving toward the elevators. The office building was one of those places designed to impress. Marble floors, tall ceilings, glass everywhere. Everything polished. Everything expensive. Everything temporary. As the elevator doors closed, Adrian caught his reflection in the mirror. A man in his mid-40s. Slightly hunched shoulders. Faded navy uniform. Worn-out shoes. A face people forgot the moment they looked away. The elevator dinged. Floor 14. The finance department. Voices echoed down the hallway before he even stepped out. Loud. Confident. Careless. Marcus was there, leaning back in his chair, one leg crossed over the other. "I'm telling you," Marcus said, waving his hand. "Once this acquisition goes through, I'm done playing small." "Done playing small," someone laughed. "You already think you run the place." "Because I practically do," Marcus replied, grinning. Vanessa sat across from him, scrolling through her phone. "You don't run anything," she said flatly. "You just talk the loudest." "That's half the job," Marcus shot back. More laughter. Adrian stepped into the hallway quietly, pushing his cart along the wall. He didn't interrupt. He never interrupted. He moved toward the glass conference room and began wiping fingerprints from the surface. Inside, Marcus noticed him. "Hey," Marcus said suddenly. "Careful there." Adrian paused. Marcus pointed at the glass. "You missed a spot." Adrian looked at the glass. It was already clean. "I'll get it," Adrian said. Marcus leaned forward. No, I mean properly. You've got to actually clean it, not just pretend." A few people chuckled. Adrian wiped the same spot again. Slower this time. More deliberate. "See," Marcus said. "That's better." Vanessa didn't even look up. "Honestly," she muttered, "I don't know why they let cleaning happen while people are still working. It's distracting." Adrian kept his eyes on the glass. "I can come back later," he said. Marcus shrugged. "No, you're already here. Might as well finish." Adrian nodded. "All right." He continued cleaning, one section at a time, ignoring the laughter behind him, ignoring the way they spoke as if he wasn't even there. But he heard everything, every word, every tone, every assumption. Later, as the meeting wrapped up, Marcus stood and stretched. "Man, I need a break. This place is exhausting." "You sit all day?" Vanessa replied. "Exactly," Marcus said. "That's the exhausting part." More laughter. They walked out, passing Adrian without a second glance. Marcus brushed past him deliberately this time. "Watch it," he muttered. Adrian stepped aside. "Sorry." Marcus didn't respond. Vanessa stopped briefly, looking at Adrian for the first time. Not really looking, just noticing. "Do you always move this slow?" she asked. Adrian met her eyes. "Just making sure it's done right." She tilted her head slightly. As long as it gets done, she said, then walked away. Adrian stood there for a moment after they left. The room quiet again, the echo of their voices still lingering. He finished cleaning the glass. Then the table. Then the chairs. Every movement precise. Controlled. Measured. As if it mattered. As if any of it mattered. Hours passed. Desks emptied. Lights dimmed. The building slowly transitioned from noise to silence. Adrian moved through it all. Cleaning. Observing. Listening. At one desk, he paused. A small framed photo. A man holding a child on his shoulders. Both smiling. Adrian picked it up gently. Studied it. Then placed it back exactly where it had been. Perfect alignment. Perfect position. He moved on. In the break room, 2 employees were still there. They didn't notice him at first. "I'm just saying," one of them said. "I don't want to end up like that." "Like what?" the other asked. "The janitor." A quiet laugh. "Come on, that's harsh." "Is it? Look at him. Same routine every day. Same job. No progress. No future." Adrian stood just outside the doorway. Still. Listening. "I'd lose my mind," the first voice continued. "Honestly, I'd rather disappear than live like that." A pause. Then, "Yeah, me too." Adrian stepped into the room. Neither of them acknowledged him. He emptied the trash, replaced the bag, wiped the counter, all without saying a word. They continued their conversation as if he wasn't there. Because to them, he wasn't. When they left, Adrian stood alone in the break room. Silent. Still. Then he picked up his cart and moved on. The morning shift was louder, brighter, more chaotic. Adrian didn't usually work mornings, but today he had been asked to cover. He didn't ask why. He never asked why. He arrived at 8:03 a.m. Same routine. Sign in. Elevator. Floor 14. The office was already buzzing. Phones ringing. People talking. Coffee machines humming. Adrian moved quietly through the noise, restocking supplies. No one noticed. Until, "All right, hold on." Marcus' voice cut through everything. Loud. Sharp. Deliberate. People turned. "What's up?" someone asked. Marcus held up a snack wrapper. "This," he said, shaking it slightly, "keeps happening." A few people looked confused. "What do you mean?" "These snacks don't just disappear on their own," Marcus replied. A couple of people chuckled. "Maybe you're eating them," someone joked. Marcus didn't smile. "No," he said. "I'm not." His eyes shifted. Slowly. Landing on Adrian. "And he's always around." The room went quiet. Adrian felt it immediately. The shift. The attention. The weight of everyone looking at him. He set down the box of supplies he was holding. "I didn't take anything," he said calmly. Marcus tilted his head. "Didn't you?" "No." Vanessa stepped forward, crossing her arms. "Well, that's convenient," she said. Adrian met her gaze. "I don't take things that aren't mine." Marcus walked closer. Slow steps. Measured. "Then explain why things keep going missing." Adrian shook his head slightly. "I can't explain something I didn't do." A pause. Silence stretched across the room. Then, Lily spoke. Soft, but clear. "There's no proof." Heads turned. Marcus frowned. "What?" "I mean," Lily continued, "we shouldn't accuse someone without evidence." Vanessa sighed. "Oh, please." Marcus looked at Lily, then back at Adrian. "You want proof?" Adrian nodded. "Check my locker." That caught everyone off guard. Marcus blinked. "Your locker?" "Yes." "Right now?" "Yes." A few murmurs spread through the room. Marcus smirked slightly. "All right," he said. "Let's do that." They walked together. A small crowd forming behind them. Curiosity. Tension. Anticipation. Adrian reached his locker. Opened it. Stepped aside. "Go ahead." Marcus searched. Thoroughly. opening every compartment, checking every corner. Nothing. He frowned. Checked again. Still nothing. The crowd shifted. Some people looked uncomfortable. Others just watched. Waiting. Marcus stepped back. "Well," he said finally, "guess you cleaned up well." A few awkward laughs. Adrian closed the locker. Slowly. Carefully. "Anything else?" he asked. Marcus shrugged. "Just doing my job." Vanessa shook her head. "This is a waste of time," she muttered, turning away. Lily looked at Adrian. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. Adrian gave a small nod. "It's all right." But it wasn't. And everyone knew it. Even if no one said it. Adrian picked up his cart and walked away. This time, not invisible, but exposed. And still, powerless. That night, Adrian did not go straight home. He never did on the nights that bothered him. Instead, he walked. Past the glowing windows of restaurants he never entered. Past couples laughing under awnings while the rain threatened, but never fell. Past a convenience store where a teenage cashier leaned over the counter, half awake, staring at his phone. The city always looked cleaner from a distance. Kinder too. From far away, the buildings seemed elegant, important, full of purpose. Only when you stepped inside them did you see what people were really like. Adrian kept walking until he reached his apartment building. It was old, narrow, and forgettable, tucked between a laundromat and a shuttered print shop that had closed 3 winters ago. He climbed the stairs instead of taking the elevator. 3rd floor, end of the hall. He unlocked the door and stepped inside. From the outside, the apartment matched everything people assumed about him. Small kitchen, second-hand couch, plain walls. No luxury, no display, no clues. But that illusion lasted only until the bedroom door opened. Inside was another world. For screens glowed across a large desk. A 5th hung on the wall, displaying charts, financial news feeds, market movement, earnings reports, acquisition alerts, and company filings. Folders were stacked neatly on metal shelves. Notebooks, contracts, research printouts marked with handwritten notes. A whiteboard filled with timelines and numbers. No chaos. No wasted space. Everything in order. Everything intentional. Adrian set his keys down, removed his work shoes, and loosened the collar of his uniform shirt. Then he sat. The moment he touched the mouse, his posture changed. Not dramatically, just enough. The tired janitor disappeared. The man underneath him remained. Focused. Calm. A secure line began blinking on the screen. He clicked once. A voice came through. "You're late tonight." Adrian leaned back slightly. Had a longer day than expected. The voice belonged to Naomi Hart, one of the very few people who knew exactly who Adrian was and had known him long enough not to ask questions when he was quiet. She had been his legal strategist once, then his fixer, then, over the years, something closer to a friend, though neither of them used that word. "I reviewed the updated numbers," she said. "Their debt position is worse than we thought." Adrian's eyes moved over the figures on screen. How much worse? Worse enough that if the wrong lender pulls support, they have no breathing room. He was silent. Naomi continued. "The board is trying to hide it while they negotiate. The company looks strong from the outside, but inside, it's brittle. One hard hit, and it folds." Adrian's expression did not change. "Do they know how exposed they are?" "Some of them do." "And Vanessa?" A pause. "Vanessa probably thinks she's untouchable." Adrian gave the faintest exhale through his nose. Not quite a laugh. "That sounds right." Naomi waited. She was good at that. She knew Adrian filled silence only when he had decided to. Finally, she said, "You heard something tonight." It wasn't a question. Adrian's eyes remained on the screen. "This morning." "What happened?" He did not answer immediately. Instead, he clicked open an internal organizational chart of the company. Names, titles, reporting lines. He looked at Marcus's position for a second longer than the others. Then he said, "They accused me of stealing." Naomi went quiet, not because she was surprised, because she understood exactly how much it took for Adrian to say something that plain. "Did they search you?" "My locker." "And they found nothing." "Of course they found nothing." "They didn't apologize." "No," Naomi said. "People like that never apologize when they're wrong. They just find a way to stay comfortable." Adrian looked down at his own hands. The same hands that pushed a mop across marble floors. The same hands that had once signed partnership agreements worth more money than Marcus would make in 3 lifetimes. "You could end this now," Naomi said carefully. "You know that." Adrian was quiet again. He did know that. He had known it for months. Maybe longer. The company had come onto his radar almost a year ago, first as a struggling acquisition target, then as an opportunity, then as a point of personal interest after he'd taken the job there under a different version of his name and quietly studied what kind of people ran it. At first, the plan had been purely financial. They were overvalued in the wrong places, undervalued in the right ones, weak in governance, overly dependent on image, and increasingly vulnerable to a leveraged acquisition if someone patient and well-funded moved at precisely the right time. Adrian had patience, and he had funding. But over time, the building had become something else. A test, a mirror, a place where masks slipped, a place where people showed him exactly who they were when they believed he had no status to defend himself with. He closed the chart and opened another file instead. An older one, Voss Industrial Holdings. The letters stayed on the screen for a long moment. Naomi heard the file open through the system, but said nothing. Adrian looked at the dated signatures. His own, 2 other names beneath them. Men who had once toasted him over expensive whiskey and called him brother. Men who had smiled while moving assets behind his back, cutting him out of the company he had built piece by piece. He still remembered the day everything collapsed. Not because of the money. The money had hurt, yes, but money had never been the real wound. It was the humiliation, the disbelief, the way people who had praised him one week avoided his calls the next, the way newspapers called it a strategic restructuring while his entire life was being taken apart, the way banks stopped pretending to respect him the moment his leverage disappeared, the way one board member had leaned back and said, almost kindly, "You should have protected yourself better." Adrian remembered standing in that boardroom after everyone else had gone, looking out at the city, knowing that his name still sat on the glass downstairs, even though nothing inside belonged to him anymore. He had left that building with one box and a promise he never spoke aloud. Never again. Never again would he allow people to define his worth by what they thought he could lose. Adrian. Naomi's voice pulled him back. Yes. You've done the work. The structure is in place. The financing is secured. If you want to proceed, we proceed. If you want more time, we wait. But don't drag this out because of one bad day. It wasn't one bad day. I know. He leaned forward, opened 3 new windows. One showed share purchase vehicles. One showed debt exposure. One showed communications drafts for immediate release pending acquisition completion. When I started this, he said, I thought I was buying a weak company. Naomi listened. Now I think I'm buying proof. Proof of what? That most people don't need power to be cruel. They just need someone beneath them. Naomi was silent for a beat. Then, softly, and Lily. Adrian paused. She spoke up. So there is at least one decent person in that building. Yes. That matters. It does. He opened the final file. Authorization. Full position consolidation. The cursor blinked near the signature line. Naomi's voice was calm now. All business. If you sign tonight, we begin final accumulation at market open. Control can shift in less than 48 hours, maybe sooner if the sellers panic. And if they resist? They won't be in a position to resist for long. Adrian rested his hand on the desk. His gaze moved across the room. The whiteboard, the documents, the screens. Years of rebuilding, years of quiet work, years of becoming the kind of man who no longer needed recognition to know exactly what he was capable of. Then he signed. Naomi exhaled softly. "All right," she said. "It begins now." Adrian closed the file. "Keep me updated. Get some sleep." He almost smiled. "You've known me too long to say things like that. I say it to maintain the illusion that you're normal." The call ended. Adrian sat in the dark glow of the screens for a long moment. Then his phone lit up with a calendar reminder. Tomorrow, 8:30 a.m. Supply inventory audit. He stared at it. A small, absurd detail in the middle of something enormous. And yet that was how life always worked. Grand decisions happened beside ordinary ones. The man who had just authorized a corporate takeover still had to show up in the morning and refill hand soap dispensers for people who thought he was nothing. He stood, walked to the kitchen, and poured a glass of water. The city lights flashed faintly through the window. He looked down into the street below. A couple argued at the curb. A cyclist sped through a yellow light. Somewhere, a siren rose and faded. The world moved on. Unaware, Adrian drank the water slowly. Then he returned to the desk, pulled up the employee profile system he had quietly learned to access months ago, and opened Lily's record. Lily Chun. Intern. Temporary contract. Excellent performance reviews. No senior sponsor. No protection. He closed the file after a few seconds. Then he opened Vanessa's. Then Marcus's. He read them both without expression. Titles. Compensation. Influence. Internal notes. Marcus had risen by being loud. Vanessa by being ruthless. Neither had built anything real. They only knew how to stand close to power and mistake that warmth for strength. At midnight, Adrian finally shut down 3 of the screens. At 1 in the morning, he turned off the last 2. At 1:13, he lay down on the narrow bed in the next room and stared at the ceiling. He did not feel triumphant. He did not feel angry. He felt settled, as if a door had opened long ago and was only now beginning to close. Tomorrow, he would go back into the building, push the cart, keep his eyes down, let them talk, let them believe what they wanted. And somewhere beneath their polished floors, the foundation under them would already be shifting. The next morning, Adrian arrived 3 minutes earlier than usual. Not because he needed to, because he wanted to see the building before it woke up. The lobby was almost empty. Only the security guard at the front desk and a maintenance worker changing a ceiling panel near the elevators. The guard looked up. "Morning." "Morning," Adrian replied. The man hesitated, then added, "Heard about yesterday." Adrian stopped. The guard cleared his throat awkwardly. "People talk. That's all." Adrian studied him for a second. There was no mockery there. No pity either. Just discomfort. "The building always talks," Adrian said. The guard gave a short nod. "Yeah, it does." Adrian stepped into the elevator and rode up alone. By the time he reached the finance floor, the office was beginning to fill. He started with the supply closet. Inventory count. Paper towels, soaps, trash liners, surface cleaner, floor solution. He marked quantities on a clipboard while voices drifted in from the hall. An anxious energy had replaced the usual confidence. He noticed it right away. People spoke faster, more quietly. The tone had changed. At 8:27, Vanessa walked by with her phone pressed to her ear. No, that's not what I approved, she said sharply. Then get me the revised numbers before the board sees them. She passed Adrian without looking at him. 30 seconds later, Marcus came through behind her, carrying 2 coffees and trying to sound important to the person on his headset. I already said I'd handle it. No, don't send that to her yet. Send it to me first. Because if it lands badly, guess who gets blamed? Exactly. He almost collided with Adrian in the doorway, then stopped with immediate irritation. Can you not block the entrance? Adrian moved half a step to the side. There's room. Marcus stared at him, then scoffed. Unbelievable. He walked off. Adrian watched him go, expressionless. At 9:10, the first closed-door meeting started. At 9:25, a second one. At 9:40, the CFO arrived unexpectedly, jacket unbuttoned, tie crooked, carrying a folder so tightly the corners bent in his hand. Adrian was wiping down the glass wall outside the conference room when the executives filed in. He kept his movement steady, invisible enough to remain, present enough to hear. Inside, voices rose quickly. We can't sustain this if the lenders tighten. Then they can't tighten. That's not how this works. Who leaked the projection? No one leaked anything. The market can smell weakness. Vanessa's voice cut through them. You're overreacting. We've had bad quarters before. An older man answered her. This is not a bad quarter. This is structural exposure. Marcus stood off to one side of the room, not speaking, trying to look like he belonged there. Adrian wiped the same section of glass twice. Then a third time. No one noticed. The CFO dropped a document on the table. If we lose just 2 of the larger institutional positions, we become vulnerable. Vulnerable to what? Vanessa demanded, though she already knew. He looked directly at her. To a takeover. Silence followed. Short, but heavy. Vanessa leaned back in her chair. That won't happen. Why not? Because no one moves that fast. The older man gave a dry laugh. People move very fast when they've been preparing quietly. Adrian lowered the cloth into the bucket. He heard enough. He turned and pushed the cart away. By noon, the rumor had reached every floor. No one said takeover out loud in the open, but they said versions of it. Potential restructuring, investor pressure, strategic review, unplanned options. Every polished term people used when they wanted panic to sound respectable. Lily found Adrian near the copy room. He was replacing a trash liner when she stopped a few feet away. Mr. Voss. He looked up. Most people called him janitor, maintenance, or nothing at all. Hearing his name spoken correctly made him pause. Yes. She held a folder against her chest with both hands. I wanted to say about yesterday. You already did. I know. She glanced around to make sure no one was listening. I should have said more. Adrian straightened slightly. You said enough. No, I didn't. I should have told Marcus he was out of line. I should have said Vanessa was being unfair. I should have. You're an intern, Adrian said gently. You were already taking a risk. She looked frustrated, not with him, but with herself. That doesn't make it right. No, he said. It doesn't. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then Lily lowered her voice. Something's wrong, isn't it? With the company? She nodded. Adrian tied off the full trash bag neatly. Something is always wrong with companies like this. That's not an answer. He looked at her. She had the kind of face that made honesty feel possible. Young, serious, trying very hard to be brave in a place that rewarded performance over decency. People are worried, he said. I noticed. Then trust what you noticed. She hesitated. Then, even quieter, should I be? He held her gaze for a moment. Yes, he said, but not for the reason everyone else is. Her brow tightened in confusion. Before she could ask anything else, Marcus's voice rang out from down the hall. "Lily, conference room. Now." She flinched slightly, then looked back at Adrian. "See you around, Mr. Voss." Adrian nodded once. "Yes." She walked off quickly, and Adrian returned to his work. At 3:15, Naomi sent the first update. Position accumulation underway. Several sellers moving faster than expected. At 4:02, another. Institutional block likely available before close. Recommend immediate approval. Adrian read the message in a locked restroom stall, the only place in the building where no one would think to question why the janitor had his phone out for too long. He typed back 3 words. "Approve. Take it." At 5:30, the office thinned slightly. At 6 o'clock, Vanessa was still there, pacing. At 6:20, Marcus was trying and failing to sound calm on a call. No, I understand the concern. I'm saying internally we're stable. We're stable." Adrian passed by with the cart. Marcus lowered his voice, annoyed to be overheard by someone he considered irrelevant. After the call ended, he snapped his fingers once. "Hey." Adrian stopped. Marcus pointed toward a coffee stain near the baseboard. "You missed that." Adrian looked at it. Fresh stain. Not his. "I'm getting to it." Marcus folded his arms. "Well, get to it faster. People are under pressure today." Adrian met his eyes. "For some people, pressure is new." Marcus frowned. "What's that supposed to mean?" Adrian bent, wiped the stain, rose again. "Nothing," he said. Marcus stared for another second, unsettled by something he couldn't name, then walked away. At 7:10, Adrian left the floor and went out into the alley behind the building. The air was cold. The city smelled faintly of rain and metal. He dialed Naomi. She answered immediately. "We can take majority influence by tomorrow morning if we push now." "Do it." "You sound certain." "I am. There will be fallout." "There already is." She was quiet for a second. "Once control tips, they'll know someone's been building a position for months." "Yes." "Do you want your name shielded until the final notice?" Adrian looked up at the dark windows above him. Somewhere up there, Vanessa was still moving from office to office, still thinking proximity to power meant she could command the outcome. "Yes," he said. "Until the meeting." Naomi understood immediately. "You want them seated before they know." "Yes." "And Marcus?" Adrian's voice remained calm. "Marcus will be wherever people like Marcus always are, near the loudest person in the room, mistaking noise for safety." Naomi almost laughed. "Fine. I'll handle the timing." When the call ended, Adrian remained in the alley for another minute. Then he went back inside. The building felt different now. Not physically, structurally. As if everyone inside it was still standing on the same floors, walking the same halls, sitting at the same desks, but the ground under all of them had become uncertain. He finished his shift in silence, wiped the last conference table, emptied the last waste bin, locked the last supply cabinet. At the elevators, he saw Vanessa waiting alone. She glanced at him, then away. A second later, she looked back. "Did you hear anything strange today?" she asked abruptly. Adrian looked at her. "Strange." She seemed irritated by the need to explain. "People talking. Rumors. Anything." He considered her for half a second. "Yes." "What?" "That people are nervous." Vanessa exhaled sharply. "People are always nervous." The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. For a moment, it was just the two of them, reflected in the mirrored walls. Vanessa adjusted her cuff, then said, almost to herself, "This place would collapse if half the people in it stopped doing their jobs." Adrian's eyes remained forward. Sometimes it collapses because the wrong people think they're doing them. She turned slightly toward him. What? But the doors opened to the lobby before he answered. Adrian stepped out. Good night, he said, and left her standing there with her own reflection. By 8 o'clock the next morning, the building felt like a live wire. No one smiled in the lobby. No one lingered at the coffee station. Phones rang, were answered, and ended too quickly. Eyes moved more than voices did. Adrian arrived in uniform. Same cart, same clipboard, same worn shoes. He signed in, rode the elevator up, and entered the finance floor just as Marcus came storming out of a conference room. What do you mean they sold? Marcus was saying into his phone. To who? No, I'm asking you to tell me who. He stopped when he saw Adrian. Not because he cared, because he needed somewhere to put his anger. What are you staring at? Adrian had not been staring. Nothing. Then move. Adrian moved past him and continued down the hall. Inside, he could hear raised voices. The board had called an emergency session for 9 o'clock. At 8:22, Naomi's message came through. Control secured. Final notice in legal review. At 8:31, another. Board informed. Senior leadership meeting at 9 o'clock mandatory. At 8:44, final update. Your attendance requested for 9:07 exactly. Adrian read the message, locked his phone, and continued wiping down the reception counter on the executive floor. At 8:55, Vanessa strode past him, heels striking the floor like punctuation. She looked composed on the surface, but too sharp around the mouth, too fast in the eyes. Coffee, she snapped toward the assistant at the desk. I already brought one to the conference room. Then bring another. The assistant nodded quickly. Vanessa turned and nearly clipped Adrian's shoulder. She stopped. For 1 second, they stood facing each other. You again, she muttered, as if his presence itself was an irritation the building should have solved for her. Adrian said nothing. She looked at his cart, then at him, then walked on. At 9 o'clock, the doors to the main conference room closed. At 9:03, Marcus entered late and tried to look as though lateness had been a strategic choice. At 9:05, the assistant rushed out with tears in her eyes. Adrian noticed, but did not stop her. At 9:06, Naomi texted one word. Now. Adrian left the supply cart parked outside the elevator bank. He walked into the private washroom at the end of the hall, locked the door, opened the garment bag he had placed there before sunrise. Inside hung a charcoal suit. Simple, impeccable. He changed without hurry, button by button, cuff by cuff. He removed the name tag from his uniform shirt and set it on the counter beside the folded fabric. Then he looked at himself in the mirror. No transformation, no magic, just alignment. The outside finally matching the man who had been there all along. At 9:07, he stepped into the corridor. The assistant outside the conference room looked up and froze. Her eyes widened in confusion first, then recognition, then something close to fear. Sir. Adrian did not slow down. He opened the conference room door and walked in. Conversation stopped so abruptly it felt physical. The board members were seated on one side, senior executives on the other, Vanessa near the center, Marcus at the far end. The CEO, standing rather than sitting, face drained of color. Every head turned. Marcus blinked twice. Actually blinked, as if that might correct what he was seeing. Vanessa's expression went from irritation to confusion to disbelief in under 2 seconds. Adrian closed the door behind him. No one spoke. He walked to the empty chair at the head of the table's side position reserved for principal control. Naomi, attending by secure video on the wall screen, gave the smallest nod. The CEO cleared his throat. Mr. Voss, he said, voice strained. Thank you for joining us. Marcus looked from the CEO to Adrian and back again. Mr. Who? No one answered him. Adrian remained standing a moment longer. Then he looked around the room, at the faces he had passed every day, at the mouths that had dismissed him, at the people who had mistaken invisibility for insignificance. I believe, he said calmly, we've already met. The silence that followed was complete. Marcus laughed first, but it was the wrong kind of laugh. Thin, nervous, searching for permission from the room. What is this? He said. What is this? Some kind of joke? No one joined him. Vanessa stared at Adrian as if language had left her. Finally, she found some. You work here. I did. As a cleaner. Yes. Marcus leaned forward. Then why are you in this room? Naomi's voice came through the screen. Because as of 8:31 this morning, Mr. Adrian Voss, through affiliated holding entities, controls the majority position in this company. Marcus stopped moving. The CEO lowered his eyes. Vanessa spoke next, each word clipped. That's impossible. Adrian looked at her. It is not. You expect us to believe that you... Yes, Adrian said quietly. I do. The board chair, an older woman with silver hair and a gaze that missed nothing, slid a folder across the table toward Vanessa. You don't need to believe it, she said. You need to read it. Vanessa did not touch the folder. Marcus did. His hands shook just enough to make the paper rustle. He scanned the first page, then the second. His face changed. Wait, he said, looking up. Wait, this started months ago. Yes, Adrian replied. Marcus looked around wildly. No one saw this. One person did, said the board chair. The one doing it. Vanessa sat back slowly. The color had left her face. You were watching us. Adrian considered the wording. No, he said. I was working. That's not what I mean. I know. She held his gaze. For the first time since Adrian had known her, she looked uncertain. Not angry. Not superior. Not amused. Uncertain. What do you want? She asked. That question changed the room, because it exposed what she believed power was for. Punishment. Retaliation. Dominance. Adrian remained standing. What I want, he said, is a company run by people who understand the difference between position and character. Marcus scoffed, but too late, too weakly. Oh, come on. Adrian turned to him. The shift in Marcus was immediate. He had never been looked at by Adrian this directly before. Not really. Not without the shield of assumption. You accused me of theft in front of your staff, Adrian said. Marcus swallowed. You were around the break room. I was around the break room because it is part of the floor I cleaned. Marcus opened his mouth, then closed it. Vanessa tried to recover control. If this is about personal resentment. It isn't, Adrian said. Then why mention it? Because character reveals itself in small moments before it destroys larger things. The room stayed still. He continued. A company this vulnerable does not become vulnerable by accident. It becomes vulnerable because the wrong behaviors are tolerated when they seem minor. Disrespect, carelessness, vanity, people protecting image over truth, people confusing hierarchy with competence. No one interrupted him. Even the CEO, who clearly wanted the discomfort to end, said nothing. Adrian looked at the board chair. She gave a slight nod for him to continue. I took a job in this building because I wanted to know what was underneath the reporting decks in polished language. I wanted to know how people behaved when no one important was watching. He let the sentence sit, then added, the problem was, no one understood that everyone is important when they are the one holding the truth. Vanessa's jaw tightened. You deceived the company. No, Adrian said. I entered it quietly. What happened after that was not my invention. I did not create your behavior. I witnessed it. Marcus's voice came out smaller now. What happens next? Adrian looked at the board chair again. then at Naomi on the screen, then back at Marcus. What happens next, he said, depends on whether this company wants to be salvageable. The board chair spoke. Effective immediately, there will be leadership changes pending review. Certain conduct matters will be referred to HR and outside counsel. Operational controls are being restructured. Marcus looked sick. Vanessa remained rigid. This is outrageous. No, said the board chair evenly. What's outrageous is that it took a hostile accumulation for this board to see how badly culture and oversight had deteriorated. The CEO sat down heavily, as if his knees had finally given up. Adrian finally took his seat. He did not smile. There was no satisfaction in this room. Only exposure. Only consequence. Only the sound of people meeting a truth they had never planned to face. The days that followed were quieter than Adrian expected. Not calmer, just quieter. As if the building itself had lost the confidence to lie. The gossip did not stop, but it changed shape. People no longer whispered about market pressure. They whispered about emails, investigations, review committees, unexpected departures. At 10 o'clock that same morning, Marcus was escorted from his office by HR and a security officer who looked embarrassed to be there. Marcus kept talking the whole walk down the corridor. This is insane. This is completely insane. You can't do this over a misunderstanding. No one answered him. A few people watched from their desks, pretending not to. Lily saw it happen from the copy room. Adrian saw Lily see it. He did not call her over. There was too much motion around them already. Vanessa lasted longer. Of course she did. People like Vanessa always lasted longer because they knew how to speak the language of self-preservation. She requested a private meeting, then another, then legal representation, then a reconsideration of process. By late afternoon, her badge access had been restricted. By evening, she was clearing her office into 2 white archive boxes while refusing help from anyone. Adrian did not go to watch. He had no interest in humiliation as a spectator sport. Instead, he sat in what had once been a secondary executive office, now temporarily assigned to him, reading personnel files and departmental summaries with a concentration that made the room feel smaller. There was a knock at the open door. Lily stood there. Different clothes today. Same folder in her hands. Do you have a minute? Adrian closed the file. Yes. She stepped in slowly, still not entirely comfortable with the visual fact of him in a suit, behind a desk, under a nameplate that had appeared only hours earlier. I wasn't sure if I should call you Mr. Voss, or... Adrian is fine. She nodded. Adrian. She looked around the office, then back at him. I still can't really process this. That makes 2 of us. That drew a small, surprised laugh from her. Then she grew serious again. I wanted to ask you something. Go ahead. When you took the job here, did you already know what you were going to do? He thought about the question. Financially, yes. Personally, no. She frowned slightly. What does that mean? It means I knew the company might be worth buying. I didn't know what I would learn by working inside it. And what did you learn? He leaned back slightly. That titles hide weakness very well. That decent people often stay quiet because they think it's safer. And that cruelty becomes routine faster than most organizations realize. Lily looked down at the folder in her hands. I did stay quiet. Not entirely. Not enough. Adrian considered her for a moment. You spoke when speaking had a cost. That matters. She looked up. In this place. In any place. Silence settled between them, but not awkwardly. Just thoughtfully. Then Lily said, Are you going to fire everyone? A faint smile touched Adrian's mouth and disappeared again. No. Good. Were you worried? Yes. He appreciated the honesty. No, he said again, more gently. Most people here are not the problem. They're just used to surviving around it. She nodded slowly. That sounds true. Adrian opened the folder she still held and realized she had brought him the intern analysis packet she'd been preparing before everything changed. I finished the process review, she said. Well, the version I had been working on before all this happened. I didn't know if it still mattered. He took the folder and glanced through the first pages. It was thorough, clear, sharper than most of the executive reports he'd read that week. It matters, he said. You actually mean that? Yes. She let out a breath she seemed to have been holding for days. Thank you. As she turned to leave, Adrian said, Lily. She looked back. What are your plans after this internship? She gave a small shrug. I was hoping for a full-time analyst role eventually, but I didn't exactly have a sponsor. You do now, Adrian said. Her eyes widened. He returned his attention to the report, not to dismiss her, but to keep the moment from becoming theatrical. HR will contact you once the restructuring plan is finalized. For a second, she just stood there. Then she nodded once, firmly, because anything more emotional would probably have overwhelmed her. Thank you, she said again, quieter this time. After she left, Adrian sat alone in the office and looked at the city through the glass wall. Same skyline, different vantage point. Strange how little the view changed when everything else did. Near sunset, Naomi arrived in person. She entered without knocking, dropped a thick binder on the table, and sat opposite him. Well, she said, you've made a mess. Adrian looked at the binder. I bought one. That too. She slid the binder closer. Initial transition documents. Governance revisions. Legal exposure summaries. A very long list of people who are suddenly pretending they knew this was coming. He opened the binder. Of course they are. Naomi studied him. You don't look pleased. I'm not displeased. That's not the same thing. He glanced up. What should I feel? She shrugged. Vindicated. Triumphant. Smug. Human. He closed the binder. I don't feel vindicated. No. No. Because none of this had to happen this way. Naomi nodded slowly. That's the part people won't understand. Probably not. She leaned back. They'll make it a revenge story. It isn't. I know. He stood and walked to the window. Down below, employees were leaving the building in small groups, speaking in low voices. It would have been easier, he said, if they had just been competent. Naomi almost smiled. Only you would say that after taking over a company. They don't fail because they were cruel, Adrian said. They fail because they were arrogant enough to think cruelty had no cost. Naomi let that sit. Then she stood too. So what now? Adrian looked out at the glass and steel across the street, lit gold by the setting sun. Now we rebuild it. Into what? A place where people are noticed before they become useful. Naomi gave him a long look. That sounds expensive. It is. Good, she said. You can afford it. Later that evening, after most of the staff had gone, Adrian left the office and walked the finance floor one last time. Not as a cleaner, not as an owner, just as a man taking measure of a place that had revealed itself completely. The conference room where Marcus had mocked him. The break room where the accusation started. The corridor where Lily had apologized. The elevator where Vanessa had stood beside him without recognizing the danger in underestimating someone. At the far end of the hall sat the janitor closet. Door half open. Inside, the supply cart was parked exactly where Adrian had left it before the emergency meeting. Uniform folded on the shelf. Extra gloves in the top tray. Spray bottle hanging from the side. He stepped inside slowly. Ran his hand once across the handle of the cart. A simple object. A useful object. A thing that had carried him through hallways where no one saw him clearly. He looked at the uniform on the shelf. There was no shame in it. That mattered. No shame in work. No shame in cleaning. The shame belonged elsewhere. To those who thought another person's role made them smaller. To those who treated service as weakness. To those who thought dignity belonged only to the visible. Adrian picked up the uniform carefully and folded it tighter. Then he set it back down. Not discarded. Not rejected. Just completed. When he stepped out of the closet, Lily was standing at the end of the hall, waiting for the elevator. She noticed him and gave a small wave. He returned it. The elevator doors opened. She stepped inside, then called before the doors closed, "Good night, Adrian." "Good night, Lily." The doors shut. The hall went quiet. Adrian stood there another moment. Then he turned off the corridor lights one section at a time and walked back toward the executive floor, not looking behind him. Because some doors do not need to be slammed to be closed. And some victories are not loud. Sometimes the deepest kind of justice is simply this: the truth being seen, the right people remaining, the wrong people losing the shelter they mistook for power, and a man who was once ignored walking forward without needing anyone to tell him who he had been all along. The end. Thank you for staying until the end. As you've seen, some people mistake silence for weakness until the truth changes everything. If this story moved you, don't forget to like, subscribe, and share, because the next underdog story might be even more unforgettable.